Hey, everybody, welcome back. And in this video, I am going to be going over some questions that I am asked as a real estate investor all the time. And I know some of you are going to relate to this. So when I came up with these questions, then I had to say, okay, well, these are my answers. But you know what? In the comments, let me know what your answers would be. So these are some of the most common questions that as a real estate investor, I am asked constantly, like if I give a presentation, and so we're going to go through the top questions I get asked. There were so many of them, I had to do it in two different sessions. So part one, and then next week you'll get part two. So, and then stay tuned at the end because I want to talk to you about some of the things that I do to help people get started in real estate. So let's get going. So number one, how do I determine the value of an investment property? So, we always talk about like, okay, is it a deal? Is it not a deal? And the only way you know if it's a deal or not is the numbers. I mean, the numbers don't lie. You can't get emotional about real estate investing. I mean, yes, you can get emotional, like you're excited, but when it comes to doing an analysis of the property, you've got to look at the numbers. So I'm a real estate broker here in Texas. So I use the MLS. And one of my questions is, that I get asked is, do I need to be a real estate agent? And no, you don't need to be, but sometimes it's advantageous because you can have access to data that, I know Zillow and all that, but it's more accurate off of the MLS. So I use the ARV, the solds, and I use comparable properties because you got to look at apples to apples and not apples to oranges. And I also look at my exit strategies. So there's the BRRRR method. That's where you buy it, you rehab it, you refinance it, and you repeat it. Short term versus long term, and the net income or your return on investment. Buy and hold. I like to get into appreciating areas. And then flips, wholesale, you want to look at 70% of ARV. So what is that ARV? So ARV stands for after repair value. So most investors that are trying to do flips or maybe wholesale, I mean, to get a really good deal, you can use this formula and you can come up with an offer to a seller. Now, I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and it is super competitive. So finding a deal at 70% of ARV and actually getting someone to accept it is a little crazy right now because there's investors that are paying, 80, 85, 90% of ARV. So let's just kind of walk through what after repair value is. Now, after repair value is what the property would be worth if it was completely rehabbed and, you were going to throw it on the MLS. What could you sell it for? So let's take an example of a $200,000 property. So if I said, okay, the ARV, like if I had this distressed property and it was in shambles, but if I fixed it up and put all the work into it, what would it be worth when I got done? So let's just say in this example, it'd be worth $200,000. Okay, so I'm talking to the seller and I'm looking at, what kind of repairs. So let's just say, it needs $35,000 in repairs. So what I'm going to do to get my offer to the seller is I'm going to take 200,000 times it by 70%. That makes that 140,000 minus repairs, right? So that means my maximum offer to the seller should be $105,000. Now, again, if you're in a market that's just competitive, it's going to be hard to get a 70% ARV deal. And it does depend on what you're going to do with the property. So if you're going to flip it, that's what you usually target, right? You want to get the property as low as possible to make the most profit. But if I'm going to do a buy and hold or maybe an Airbnb property, I'm not so worried about the 70% of ARV as long as the numbers make sense when I actually, after I rehab it and then rent it out, whether long-term or short-term. So the impact of ARV could have to do with your strategy. Now, what's the best real estate investment strategy for me? Okay, I wish I had a crystal ball and I could just sit down with everybody, like shake it, and here's your exit strategy that you should be doing. Sometimes I meet people that they've used the crazy 8 ball to try and figure out what their exit strategy is. So One thing is that you have to have, it's all about your goals. But I can tell you this, that you have to have something in place to generate leads, because without leads, without that deal machine coming in, it's hard to know what kind of strategy you should be looking at, right? Because I teach people about how to monetize every lead. So first off is your financial goals. Like if you're somebody that's just trying to flip houses to make some quick money or wholesale, that's a different strategy, right? If you're somebody who wants to build a rental portfolio, well, that's a different strategy. And you're going to be looking for different leads, right? Or if you're going to do Airbnb. So it depends on, what your goals are. And that's what I talk to people about. It's like, well, okay, well, how much time do you have? How much money do you have to put down? Are you looking at long-term versus short-term goals? Like right now, you're just trying to build your cash up. So you want to get into wholesaling, or, you have a down payment, or maybe you have a homestead that now you're ready to convert that into maybe a short-term or long-term rental, and you could go buy another property. And then, you have to educate yourself about the different strategies, because I've been doing it for a while now. So when I first started out, I do buy and holds. That's what I did. But now I'm doing Airbnbs, I'm doing owner financing, I'm creating notes. So you learn those strategies. And I always tell people, okay, kind of stick to one strategy till you have that down, and then move on to the next one. Otherwise, you're going to be spinning your wheels. And again, there has to be some lead generation. Most investors want to talk to, distressed sellers, people whose house, cannot go on the market. It's just bad. It has a lot of repair issues, or maybe they're in a situation where, they want to sell the house fast and they just want to, find an investor to buy it. But lead generation has to do with really your strategies, because as you start talking to sellers and you fine tune what you're looking for, because today I might talk to someone that their house wouldn't make a good long-term rental, but maybe it would make a good flip. So it's really hard to just say, okay, I'm only going to do this, or I'm only going to do that, until you start generating leads. And that's what I help people with, is how do you start doing that? So number one, you have to have some kind of time commitment. You cannot do real estate investing without committing some time. And whether that's 15 minutes a week or 15 minutes a day, this is not, this industry is not for the faint of heart. And you can't just wing it, right? Because there's a lot at stake. There's a lot of money at stake. If you're concerned about your reputation, when you're talking to sellers and things like that. So you have to have an accountability plan. Like, what are you going to do each day if you really want to be a real estate investor to reach your goals as a real estate investor? And do you have support? I work with a lot of women that want to get into real estate investing, and they don't, they are too busy taking care of their families. Maybe they're working another job, and they just don't feel like they have the support to be able to really be successful in this industry. So I'm just here to say that, there are women that we bond together and support one another to help everyone grow their real estate business. And then the learning, you need to spend time, listening to podcasts, listening to these YouTube videos, reading some books, and hiring a teacher. And if you're brand new to this, you need to hire a trusted mentor, someone that can kind of guide you. I've had mentors. Most successful real estate investors at one point in their career had an investor, or I'm sorry, had a mentor that kind of showed them the ropes. It's like, we've been there, done that. And so a good mentor will help you kind of avoid the pitfalls that, we might have stumbled onto. And then, of course, networking and partnerships is a great way to learn about real estate investing. Now, how do you find a profitable investment property? Isn't that the million-dollar question? So this one is another, because what might be profitable for me might not be profitable for you. So really what we're talking about is exit strategies. And all good real estate investors know that they need to have multiple exit strategies with properties, right? There's always wholesaling, there's always flipping, there's always the BRRRR method, there's long-term rentals, there's short-term rentals, there's owner financing. There's so many ways that you can get into real estate investing. And it has to do with how you're generating leads for your distressed sellers, and what type of properties that you're working with. So let's just talk about a little bit about marketing strategy. So one of the questions later on is about, do I need money? And, marketing is one of those things that, you can do it for free, might just take you a little bit longer. But, one of my favorite ways to find houses is driving for dollars. Now, the way I do it is about every time I'm out and about, I'll go to a neighborhood and I'll kind of drive around. I'm looking for that one house or two houses that, it just doesn't fit in. I'm not talking about, overgrown weeds, although that does happen, but, does the roof look like it's bad, or is there missing shutters, or the blinds are broken? Just some things that tell, maybe the seller's in a little bit of distress. Now, I still mail a card or a letter to that person. I come home, look it up, so, that's still costing me the postage. But there's all kinds of things you can do, like purchasing lists, so what the idea is that you want to find a way that not everybody else is trying to get those investors. So if you've been doing this for a little bit of time, you might have talked with sellers and they're like, oh my gosh, just another investor has called me, or I've been to appointments with sellers where they're literally, the investors are lined up, like the seller had them every half hour. They were just lined up out the door. So, but I like to purchase lists, that I focus on like pre-probate, and I focus on non-owner occupied or absentee owners. There's some tired landlords out there. For a freebie, you can, everybody has access to tax records, property tax records, and you can do searches just, for your county. Just go to the property tax for your county and you can pull up lists. Same with probate. You might check with your local county courthouse, but sometimes you can just literally go to the courthouse, or they have it on their website. Might not be the freshest data, but you can actually get it with, no money down. Of course, referrals are now a great way that I buy distressed properties. And once you start kind of building your business and you worked with past clients, they're happy, and you treated them good, and they felt like, you weren't taking advantage of them or anything, then they're going to refer their friends to you. So that's, a good way to get more distressed properties. And of course, direct mail, that's one of my go-to strategies. It is old school, but I like it and it works. And as I've said before on many podcasts, what I do is I just go get the dollar store note cards, and I hired a local mom, and she writes out my messages and I mail them out. So, that cost is not that much for the type of deals that I get. And then there's cold calling. You can buy a list, you can get I've had a dialer, I've had VAs doing this. So but what I would say is don't try to do everything at once. Pick one or two strategies and just stick to it. Now, the other thing about marketing and lead generation is the follow-up, because if you don't follow up, they're not going to call you after that. You send them that one card, right? They're just not going to do it. So you might have to send out, 4 or 5, up to 7, 8 times before they actually contact you back. And literally I did a postcard mailing to a list I had, and we mailed probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 times to this one group of people. And a year later, the lady called me. So you just never know. So, a lot of people get fancy and they get a CRM. You know what? I do have a CRM now, but when I started out, I used an Excel spreadsheet and it worked fine. You don't have to make this real complicated. So plan on making, contact 5 to 7 times. And even if they call you, right, they might not, a yes today or a no today doesn't mean it won't be a yes tomorrow. So just keep in contact with them and be organized. So, sometimes we are challenged with, we get busy or whatever. So, if you're going to be a real estate investor, spend some time getting organized so that when people call you and then you're supposed to follow up with them or make an offer on their house, that, you're not looking for that little scrap of paper. And then what are you looking for? So that kind of goes back to what your goals are. And sometimes as a real estate investor, we don't know when we're first starting out. So when I first started out, I was just like, okay, I want to buy rentals. That's what I wanted to do. So I was pretty focused on that. I wasn't really interested in doing flips at that time when I first started. So maybe that's all you're focused on is on wholesaling or flipping. And so you can make your marketing kind of streamlined, if you will, and then learn to monetize each lead. So even today, if I get somebody that has a house and it's just not in an area I want, it's not, I'm not working on, let's say I'm not buying long-term rentals right now, but I can still monetize that lead, right? I can still wholesale it. I can, even if I don't get a ton of money, if I get, a couple thousand, I'll be happy, right? So, because maybe the margin wasn't there. So, you can monetize all of your leads. You just need to know how to do it. And then you do have to commit your time and some money. So even if you have a small budget, if you can, do 50 to $100 a month, you can start off as a real estate investor. You don't have to have tons of money. You just need to have some money. Now, I'm going to throw this in here about Airbnb properties because one of the things I get asked a lot is how to find an Airbnb property. And this is kind of like, how do you find the needle in the haystack? So there's so many things that are based on the answer here. So to look for an Airbnb property, I say first, where would you want a vacation? Now, if you want a vacation place that no one else wants to vacation, you might want to think about that. But if you want to get an Airbnb property, but you have no idea where to even start, then kind of just think about, okay, well, where would I want to go, right? And then what amenities and attractions are in that area? Like, why would people go there? Not just you, but why would other people? So, like ski resorts or, Florida has a lot of beaches. I have my Airbnbs in Texas. So what would make people want to come to that area, right? And then once you kind of narrow down those two things, you've got an area, then you need to start looking at HOA restrictions. So I always tell people kind of avoid HOAs. It's kind of one of those things that today, short-term rentals could be okay, but then, the city or whatever votes on it. So you just kind of have to be cognizant of, are there going to be, or could there be future restrictions on HOA? Because you don't want to spend the money to buy a property. Then you find out 6 months later, you can't run an Airbnb business. Do you need city permits? Are there registrations or restrictions? And this is a lot of homework you need to do ahead of time before you're really making the offers, before you're really focusing on the area. But people ask me this all the time. Well, how do I find an Airbnb? So I live in Dallas, Texas, as I said. And so I have a property that is a long-term rental, and I'm getting ready to convert it to a short-term rental. However, I just found out that the city of Dallas is looking at doing restrictions on short-term rentals. Well, this property is not in the city of Dallas, but it is in Dallas County. So does it mean that the city of Dallas, once they make that, will the county adopt that? I don't know. So we're kind of back and forth about that. And then you can also find out, and I have a whole YouTube video about this on about short-term rentals, but you can go on to Airbnb as a guest, log in and look at the area that you're wanting to maybe purchase a property in and see how many short-term rentals there are. The reason that's important is if you buy in that area, then just know that that's your competition, right? And it could affect how much you're going to be charging per night. And then really ask yourself, what's the main reason for owning a short-term rental? Do you want a second home? Great. It is a hot investing trend right now. So you just have to, like anything, do your due diligence and check out my videos on YouTube. I have a couple about how to find out what you can charge and, how to convert a long-term rental to a short-term. Now, can I begin investing in real estate with no money? Okay, so this was a really quick slide for me. In a nutshell, no, you cannot. Now, I have done deals where I have not used much money. I did a deal where I invested in a property and it was $100. So there are ways to do it with little to no money, but as far as doing it with absolutely zero money, I would say, show me. So now you can use other people's money, right? But you're still going to need, to get insurance and utilities and, depending on what you're going to do with the property. So I do a lot with self-directed IRAs. And so that's not really my money, because what happens is with a self-directed IRA, the self-directed IRA owns the property. And that's how I was able to purchase a property with as little as $100. So you have to understand how to use an option agreement, and then build a private money lending funnel, because once you start buying properties, so it gets harder and harder to get investment loans from, if you have like one or two, or I think it's under four now, I don't know, they change it all the time. But if you're trying to go to a traditional lender, you might not be able, maybe you're self-employed like me, and it's going to be tough for you to get a loan. So I use asset-based lending and private money, and I have used hard money. So, and then of course you can do partnerships. So if you find a deal and you're new, you can, bring it to somebody like me. We can work something out. Maybe I put up the money, right? So I guess in a nutshell, you could do a deal with no money, but it's very rare. Now, the typical money needs that in real estate investing, well, of course, you need option and earnest monies. Now, option is like you're giving you have to give the seller, or the seller, some money because you're interested in their property, right? I encourage new investors to do inspections. You're going to spend about $300 or $400, and we're going to talk more about inspections. Money for marketing, for a down payment, for closing costs, insurance. I mean, if you're going to keep the property, even if you have to flip it or you're going to flip it, you're going to need insurance, right? So you're going to have to pay for that. And if you are flipping it, you're going to have to get the utilities on. So there usually is some money, but there are ways that you can purchase properties with little to no money, right? So I don't know of any no down. And when they say no down, there's always some cost. So just be careful of that. But typically, you're going to put down, 20, 25%. If you're just doing a regular, like when I go do asset-based lending, some lenders will lend up to 70 to 80% of the value of the property. So you kind of just, and then it depends on your credit and your debt to income ratio and all of that. So now, another question I get all the time is real estate investing easier if I already own a property? Now, let's think about that. So I've already purchased a property, but we don't know what kind of property is. So is this talking about my homestead property where I live there? Do I already have a rental property? So you can see how when you get these questions from new investors, it's kind of a loaded question. It's like, well, I think I need to ask you some more questions to find out if that's going to be possible. So again, I relate it back to your goals. So let's just take the homestead. Let's say that you're living in your home. You've been there for a couple years, and now you want to turn it into a rental, and you're going to go buy another homestead home. You could do that. Sure. So, your challenge, if you're still using traditional lenders, is going to be how to show you're going to cover the first homestead, because obviously you're not going to rent it before you get out, right? So you kind of have to show the lender what you're going to do. You can convert your long-term rentals to short-term rentals, or you could even in your homestead, you could rent space in your home. You could borrow money based on the equity in your home to go and buy another property. So what banks are going to be looking is your debt to income ratio for loans. And again, this is why I tell people to go get private money lenders, because you don't have all of those rules and restrictions and everything. And it makes purchasing properties. I was able to scale just by, developing my private money lender list. So now I can just go and I can close on properties. And yes, you can start building with just one property, and it's called leverage. You're going to leverage the equity that you have in it, take out the money. So yes, I don't know if it makes it easier, because there might be some other questions that come up with a lender, depending on what you're doing, but you certainly at least have some options when you already own a property, because you can leverage that property. Now, what do I need to do before getting into real estate investing? Okay, this is a super easy one for me, because I just love working with new investors or people who are just thinking about it and just having a call. So what I say is, what you need to do is just call me, okay, or email me. And one of the exciting things that's coming up is the Winning Deals and Heels conference, which I'll be posting about, and you'll see some videos about. And it's for women real estate investors looking to either grow or get started. It's going to be awesome. And then watching some of my YouTube videos. I'm not the only one out there, definitely not the expert, but I know a thing or two. So before you start buying that property, or you're just not sure, you want to get into real estate investing, let's talk. follow me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram, and get in touch with me. And I would love to help you start lining out what your goals might be and an action plan so you can get started in real estate investing today. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Give me a like and share, and I'll see you all soon.